Good day. I did quite a thing. I did a very big thing yesterday. And I'm just gonna let you watch while I read from Art and Fear, Observations on the Perils and Rewards of Art Making by David Bales and Ted Orland. And I'll read until I have to stop. Yeah? Good morning, my love. Introduction. This is a book about making art. Ordinary art. Ordinary art means something like all art not made by Mozart. After all, art is rarely made by Mozart-like people. Essentially, statistically speaking, there aren't many people like that. But while geniuses may get made once a century or so, good art gets made all the time. Making art is a common and intimately human activity filled with all the perils and rewards that accompany any worthwhile effort. The difficulties art makers face are not remote and heroic, but universal and familiar. This, then, is a book for the rest of us. Both authors are working artists, grappling daily with the problems of making art in the real world. The observations we make here are drawn from personal experience and relate more closely to the needs of artists than to the interests of viewers. This book is about what it feels like to sit in your studio or classroom, at your wheel or keyboard, easel or camera, trying to do the work you need to do. It is about committing your future to your own hands, placing free will above predestination, choice above chance. It is about finding your own work. David Bales and Ted Orland. Part 1. Writing is easy. All you do is sit staring at a blank sheet of paper until the drops of blood form on your forehead. Gene Fowler. Chapter 1. The nature of the problem. Life is short, art long, opportunity fleeting, experience treacherous, judgment difficult. Hippocrates, 460 to 400 BC. Making art is difficult. We leave drawings unfinished and stories unwritten. We do work that does not feel like our own. We repeat ourselves. We stop before we have mastered our materials or continue on long after their potential is exhausted. Often the work we have not done seems more real in our minds than the pieces we have completed. And so questions arise. How does art get done? Why often does it not get done? And what is the nature of the difficulties that stop so many who start? These questions, which seem so timeless, may actually be particular to our age. It may have been easier to paint bison on the cave walls long ago than to write this or any other sentence today. Other people, in other times and places, had some robust institutions to shore them up. Witness the church, the clan, ritual, tradition. It's easy to imagine that artists doubted their calling less when working in the service of God than when working in the service of self. Not so today. Today almost no one feels shored up. Today artwork does not emerge from a secure common ground. The bison on the wall is someone else's magic. Making art now means working in the face of uncertainty. It means living with doubt and contradiction, doing something no one much cares whether you do, and for which there may be neither audience nor reward. Making the work you want to make means setting aside these doubts so that you may see clearly what you have done and thereby see where to go next. Making the work you want to make means finding nourishment within the work itself. This is not the age of faith, truth, and certainty. Yet even the notion that you have a say in this process conflicts with the prevailing view of art making today, namely that art rests fundamentally upon talent, and that talent is a gift randomly built into some people and not into others. It's common parlance. Either you have it or you don't. Great art is a product of genius, good art a product of near genius, which Nabokov likened to near beer, and so on down the line to pulp romances and paint by the numbers. This view is inherently fatalistic. Even if it's true, it's fatalistic, and offers no useful encouragement to those who would make art. Personally, we'll side with Conrad's view of fatalism, namely that it is a species of fear, the fear that your fate is in your own hands, but that your hands are weak. But while talent, not to mention fate, luck, and tragedy, all play their role in human destiny, they hardly rank as dependable tools for advancing your own art on a day-to-day basis. Here in the day-to-day world, which is, after all, the only one we live in, the job of getting on with your work turns upon making some basic assumptions about human nature, assumptions that place the power and hence the responsibility for your actions in your own hands. Some of these can be stated directly. A few assumptions. Art making involves skills that can be learned. The conventional wisdom here is that while craft can be taught, art remains a magical gift bestowed only by the gods. Not so. In large measure, becoming an artist consists of learning to accept yourself, which makes your work personal, and in following your own voice, which makes your work distinctive. Clearly, these qualities can be nurtured by others. Even talent is rarely distinguishable over the long run from perseverance and lots of hard work. It's true that every few years the authors encounter some beginning photography student whose first semester prints appear as finely crafted as any Ansel Adams might have made. And it's true that a natural gift like that, especially coming at a fragile early learning stage, returns priceless encouragement to its maker. But all that has nothing to do with artistic content. Rather, it simply points up the fact that most of us, including Adams himself, had to work years to perfect our art. Art is made by ordinary people. Creatures having only virtues can hardly be imagined making art. It's difficult to picture the Virgin Mary painting landscapes or Batman throwing pots. The flawless creature wouldn't need to make art, and so, ironically, the ideal artist is scarcely a theoretical figure at all. If art is made by ordinary people, then you'd have to allow that the ideal artist would be an ordinary person too, with the whole usual mixed bag of traits that real human beings possess. This is a giant hint about art because it suggests that our flaws and weaknesses, while often obstacles to get our work done, are a source of strength as well. Something about making art has to do with overcoming things, giving us a clear opportunity for doing things in ways we have always known we should do them. Making art and viewing art are different at their core. The sane human being is satisfied that the best he or she or they can do at any given moment is the best he or she or they can do at any given moment. That belief, if widely embraced, would make this book unnecessary, false, or both. Such sanity is unfortunately rare. Making art provides uncomfortably accurate feedback about the gap that inevitably exists between what you intended to do and what you did. In fact, if art making did not tell you, the maker, so enormously much about yourself, then making art that matters to you would be impossible. To all viewers but yourself, what matters is the product, the finished artwork. To you, and you alone, what matters is the process, the experience of shaping that artwork. The viewer's concerns are not your concerns, although it's dangerously easy to adopt their attitudes. Their job is whatever it is, to be moved by art, to be entertained by it, to make a killing off it, whatever. Your job is to learn to work on your work. For the artist, that truth highlights a familiar and predictable corollary. Art making can be a rather lonely, thankless affair. Virtually all artists spend some of their time, and some artists spend virtually all their time, producing work that no one else much cares about. It just seems to come with the territory. But for some reason, self-defense perhaps, artists find it tempting to romanticize this lack of response, often by heroically picturing themselves peering deeply into the underlying nature of things long before anyone else has eyes to follow. Romantic, but wrong. The sobering truth is that the disinterest of others hardly ever reflects a gulf in vision. In fact, there's generally no good reason why others should care about most of any one artist's work. The function of the overwhelming majority of your artwork is simply to teach you how to make the small fraction of your artwork that soars. One of the basic and difficult lessons every artist must learn is that even the failed pieces are essential. X-rays of famous paintings reveal that even master artists sometimes made basic mid-course corrections or deleted really dumb mistakes by overpainting the still wet canvas. The point is that you learn how to make your work by making your work, and a great many of the pieces you make along the way will never stand out as finished art. The best you can do is make art you care about, and lots of it. The rest is largely a matter of perseverance. Of course, once you're famous, collectors and academics will circle back in droves to claim credit for spotting evidence of genius in every early piece. But until your ship comes in, the only people who will really care about your work are those who care about you personally. Those close to you know that making the work is essential to your well-being. They will always care about your work, if not because it is great, then because it is yours, and this is something to be genuinely thankful for. Yet however much they love you, it still remains as true for them as for the rest of the world. Learning to make your work is not their problem. Art making has been around longer than the art establishment. Through most of history, the people who made art never thought of themselves as making art. In fact, it's quite presumable that art was being made long before the rise of consciousness, long before the pronoun I was ever employed. The painters of caves, quite apart from not thinking of themselves as artists, probably never thought of themselves at all. What this suggests, among other things, is that the current view equating art with self-expression reveals more a contemporary bias in our thinking than an underlying trait of the medium. Even the separation of art from craft is largely a post-Renaissance concept, and more recent still is the notion that art transcends what you do and represents what you are. I finished it. I did it. It's been a couple hours. I just started this, didn't I? I just went right ahead and started this. I'm a genius. Alright, I'll show you the thing. We got nice new fixtures. I'm thinking I'll probably leave it all just like this for at least another 3 weeks. Just because I think that would be best for everyone involved. Particularly Julian, who's gone for the weekend. I think if he came back and saw this, that would actually, really be good for our relationship. In the past few centuries, Western art has moved from unsigned tableaus of orthodox religious scenes to one-person displays of personal cosmologies. Artist has gradually become a form of identity which, as every artist knows, often carries with it as many drawbacks as benefits. Consider that if artist equals self, then when inevitably you make flawed art, you are a flawed person, and when worse yet you make no art, you are no person at all. It seems far healthier to sidestep that vicious spiral by accepting many paths to successful art making, from reclusive to flamboyant, intuitive to intellectual, folk art to fine art. One of those paths is yours. Chapter 3. Fears about yourself. We have met the enemy, and he is us. Pogo. Ahead lies a broad expanse of river flowing rapidly. The oarsman, only recently learning his skill, nervously maneuvers to avoid the one and only rock breaking the surface downstream. Dead center, smooth current to either side. You watch from shore. The oarsman zigs left, zigs right, and then crashes directly into the rock. When you act out of fear, your fears come true. Fears about art making fall into two families, fears about yourself and fears about your reception by others. In a general way, fears about yourself prevent you from doing your best work, while fears about your reception by others prevent you from doing your own work. Both families surface in many forms, some of which you may find all too familiar. Try this sampler. Perfection. The ceramics teacher announced on opening day that he was dividing the class into two groups. All those on the left side of the studio, he said, would be graded solely on the quantity of work they produced, all those on the right solely on its quality. His procedure was simple. On the final day of class, he would bring in his bathroom scales and weigh the work of the quantity group. 50 pounds of pots rated an A, 40 pounds a B, and so on. Those being graded on quality, however, needed to produce only one pot, albeit a perfect one, to get an A. Well, come grading time, and a curious fact emerged. The works of highest quality were all produced by the group being graded for quantity. It seems that while the quantity group was busy churning out piles of work and learning from their mistakes, the quality group had sat theorizing about perfection, and in the end had little more to show for their efforts than grandiose theories and a pile of dead clay. So, I've been doing this for 6 or 7 hours, and I don't like it. I like it, but I also don't. Like, the rug needs to be where those boxes are. And the crates can't be where they are, and there's like a bunch of boxes to still unpack and deal with, but like, here it is.
Ooh, I'll give you a better chore. I'm gonna go edit today's video now.
If you think good work is somehow synonymous with perfect work, you are headed for big trouble. Art is human, error is human, ergo, art is humor. Error. Inevitably, your work, like the preceding syllogism, will be flawed. Why? Because you're a human being, and only human beings, warts and all, make art. Without warts, it is not clear what you would be, but clearly, you wouldn't be one of us. Nonetheless, the belief persists among some artists, and lots of ex-artists, that doing art means doing things flawlessly, ignoring the fact that this prerequisite would disqualify most existing works of art. Indeed, it seems vastly more plausible to advance the counter-principle, namely that imperfection is not only a common ingredient in art, but very likely an essential ingredient. Ansel Adams, never one to mistake precision for perfection, often recalled the old adage that the perfect is the enemy of the good, his point being that if he waited for everything in the scene to be exactly right, he'd probably never make a photograph. Adams was right. To require perfection is to invite paralysis. The pattern is predictable. As you see error in what you have done, you steer your work toward what you imagine you can do perfectly. You cling ever more tightly to what you already know you can do, away from risk and exploration, and possibly further from the work of your heart. You find reasons to procrastinate, since to not work is to not make mistakes. Believing that artwork should be perfect, you gradually become convinced that you cannot make such work. You are correct. Sooner or later, since you cannot do what you are trying to do, you quit. And in one of those perverse little ironies of life, only the pattern itself achieves perfection. A perfect death spiral. You misdirect your work, you stall, you quit. To demand perfection is to deny your ordinary and universal humanity, as though you would be better off without it. Yet this humanity is the ultimate source of your work. Your perfectionism denies you the very thing you need to get your work done. Getting on with your work requires a recognition that perfection itself is paradoxically a flawed concept. For Albert Einstein, even the seemingly perfect construct of mathematics yielded to his observation that, as far as the laws of mathematics refer to reality, they are not certain, and as far as they are certain, they do not refer to reality. For Charles Darwin, evolution lay revealed when a perfect survival strategy for one generation became, in a changing world, a liability for its offspring. For you, the seed for your next artwork lies embedded in the imperfections of your current piece. Such imperfections, or mistakes if you're feeling particularly depressed about them today, are your guides. Valuable, reliable, objective, non-judgmental guides to matters you need to reconsider or develop further. It is precisely this interaction between the ideal and the real that locks your art into the real world and gives meaning to both. So I've been sitting here for like a couple hours eating and watching Netflix. I'm watching Hilda. It's fantastic. Going like, why is my so like, I don't know, I can't get the, well, it's because it's on backwards, isn't it? Didn't even realize till just now. Like, I shit you not. It's been at least an hour. At least. Okay. Bye. Okay, thank you. Bye.